Karen plots to have her own brother robbed. My sister had my bike stolen as revenge because I was eating at the hospital cafeteria. I, 23 male, recently posted on Am I the Jerk for advice because my parents and sister were angry at me for regularly eating at the hospital cafeteria since it's close to my work. I enjoy the peace and quiet there on the days I do show up to eat. But this situation escalated so quickly that I can't even believe something so dumb actually happened. My sister did the pettiest thing she's ever done to me, and for completely undeserved reasons too, when my sister found out I was eating at the hospital cafeteria. She went off on me over how that food is just for the people who work there. We ended up in a big argument about it, and I told her it wasn't like I was taking food from the mouths of patients. Then she went to our parents and got them to side with her, like always. They backed her up on how the hospital cafeteria was not a place I should be casually eating at, and we had a huge argument over it. They spent days hounding me and telling me I was in the wrong and demanding that I stop. So I went to Reddit, and here I learned that what I was doing was not wrong at all. It's a very common thing for people to do, to go eat at hospital cafeterias just because they like it. I hoped that the situation would just fade away, but a few days later my sister called me, asking if I had stopped eating at the hospital. I said no, and then it started all over again. My parents then called me, fuming and acting like I was supposed to stop going because they said so. I reminded them that I don't live under their roof anymore, and this is exactly the kind of reason why I moved out. They take my sister's side and everything. They huffed and puffed about it. This time, the fight didn't stay at home though. Other relatives found out because my sister tried to broaden her support. She was so dead set on enforcing her will upon me that she went looking for help from other relatives, but our parents were the only ones on her side. My uncle was mad at both of them when he found out what happened. He told my parents they were only siding with my sister because she's their favorite, and they're terrible parents for ever playing favorites to begin with. Then my cousin went to eat with me at the hospital cafeteria and said he'd like to go there once a week too, as he also works pretty nearby and rides his bike everywhere. We've run into each other at lunch there once already since then. He was actually rather pleased to find out the food was made healthier than most other places. He's a bit of a picky eater, so this place is kind of like his new lunch hangout. My sister got even angrier after finding out there were other people in the family eating there too. Once outed, my parents backed down due to their embarrassment. They apologized to me and gave me some malarkey that they honestly thought eating at a hospital was weird and that they felt like they just needed to defend my sister. I told them they had been placating my sister for so long that it's all they do whenever she starts something with anyone. She's been treating me like a condescending control freak and a bully since we were teenagers, even though I'm older, and they just kept enabling that. But I won't put up with it anymore. My parents ended up conceding and apologized. Then they made my sister apologize to me too. And I could tell she hated every second of it because she tried to speak through her teeth at first. Later on, my parents invited me to dinner as another form of apology, but it felt more like a show to look good to the rest of the family because they told everyone about it before it even happened. The dinner was great, I can't deny that. My parents had cooked a turkey, arguably one of my favorite things to eat. I love the drumsticks slathered with gravy. Yeah, I'm kind of a pig when I eat them, but I can't help it. My sister always thought it was hilarious, and that's one of the few things I don't mind her laughing about, so I thought nothing of why she was so giggly at dinner. Later, after the family dinner, I noticed that my bike was missing. I had parked it in the backyard out of sight, but it was gone now. I freaked out because it's my only mode of transportation. My parents did panic a bit with me, but my sister did just the opposite. She actually looked happy and was still giggling. I immediately suspected her, and she played innocent. She even gave the, "I can't believe you think I'd do something like that." I already knew she's extremely petty, but this was a whole new level for her. So I said that I was going to go over to the neighbor because I know they have cameras and they'd have seen what happened, and then I'd call the cops. My sister suddenly looked panicked, and I got mad and said I knew it was her. I demanded my bike back. She started crying and saying she didn't do anything, and our parents were immediately taking her side while scolding me for daring to accuse her. So I had enough and said I was going to the neighbors to ask to check their cameras and then I'd be calling the police. My sister finally fessed up and called me to come back. The looks on our parents' faces after they had just offended her were priceless. My sister said she was just so angry at me for having made her apologize for something she still believed she was right about, so she planned to have a couple of her friends come by and grab my bike during dinner. She said her friends were in a minivan with it just down the street. She then started saying that I couldn't call the police on her anyway because I'm her big brother. Our parents backed her up on that too, but I pulled out my phone and started marching outside again. They ran after me with my sister begging and crying for me to stop. I called her a brat, and then I told my parents I couldn't believe they were still defending her when she was acting this way. Our parents finally hit their enabling limit with her and told her to make her friends bring my bike back immediately. She got on her phone while sniffling and called her friends up, but then she suddenly ran into her room to talk to them. I couldn't hear a thing she said through the door because it was all in whispers, and our parents looked very worried too. My sister would never have willingly admitted she had my bike stolen. She just kept sobbing that it was only a prank over and over again, and she also kept using the excuse that it's just a cheap bike anyway. I bought it used some months ago for about $50, but it's in great shape and it's my main mode of transportation. My sister kept looking at our parents to back her up, and that time they just couldn't, so she just slumped down in a chair, hugging her knees and waiting with the rest of us. My sister looked increasingly freaked out the longer her friends took to bring my bike back and was repeatedly texting them. Even though my sister said her friends were just down the street, it took them roughly an hour to bring my bike back. They finally pulled up in the minivan with my bike shoved in the back, and it was completely soaked and muddy, like it had just been pulled out of a wet, muddy ditch. The bike is a 700 Celsius, so it's too tall for either of them to ride, so they just drove right up and stole the bike by dragging it into their van as fast as they could before taking off. I say they stole it because I was almost certain in the moment my sister had told them to dispose of my bike. Had I not pointed out the neighbors have cameras, I may not have gotten it back. When her friends did finally arrive, their legs were all muddy and wet nearly up to their knees. They both begged me not to report them to the police for taking my bike. I asked, while recording them, to tell me the truth and pointed out that the neighbors have cameras. Did my sister want them to get rid of my bike? They broke down and said yes. My sister wanted them to take the bike and dump it in a pond a few miles away. And then they had to go back and get it when they realized they were caught. My bike had been nearly completely submerged in muddy water. Thankfully, I didn't have many added accessories on it other than a detachable headlight and my water bottle, but the water bottle was missing. I wasn't surprised by what my sister's friends told me, and I had them tell our parents too. They laid into my sister until she was bawling on the floor, kicking and pounding like a toddler. I had never seen my sister acting this way before, even when she was a toddler. Then she shut herself in her room. Her friends were banned from ever coming to my parents' house again. My sister was forced to come out of her room by our mother and make another big apology to me. Our father then forced her to wash and oil my bike from stem to stern, under his supervision while I took apart the headlight and cleaned it out and let it dry. By the time my sister was done, it was dark outside. She glared at me like I was the devil when she came back in the house, but our parents shut her attitude right down and said that they've never been more embarrassed by her in their lives. She went back to crying in her room. I had a very frank discussion with my parents about my sister's childlike behavior and how it stemmed from them spoiling and enabling her. I said I couldn't believe I had to be the voice of reason, but the fact that she was still on the floor crying like a toddler, kicking and pounding, showed that she's still mentally a kid because of them. And they kept making me the scapegoat when she messed up, so she barely knows any sense of accountability. For once, they didn't argue with me about it, and my father silently drove me and my bike back to my apartment with his SUV. He also gave me some money to replace my bike's missing water bottle before we parted. My sister and her clique used to harass me fairly often when we ran into each other. They made fun of me as a group whenever possible, and I usually just ignored them because they bored me, and that really seemed to tick them off. But after the bike incident, I got sent numerous messages from numbers I didn't know, going off on me for making my sister cry over a silly prank. Knowing her, my sister probably fed everyone she knew a very different story of what actually happened. I texted lengthy replies of what actually happened, and even stated I have recordings of her friends admitting the truth. Some people at my sister's college found out what actually went down, maybe from my texts, maybe her friends spilled the beans. But it embarrassed my sister so much. She came home having a crying tantrum about how people there were calling her and her friends jerks and bike thieves. I may not have gone to college, but I know students who need them are very protective of their bikes. A lot of them live on shoestring budgets after all. My sister said someone even joked that they shouldn't leave their bike around her because it might just disappear if she had to apologize to anyone. My sister ended up so upset that she refused to leave her room for 3 days to have her pity party. My parents called me up to try and turn everything on me again. I reminded them about the discussion we had days before and that they need to stop babying her and let her deal with the repercussions of her own actions. If she fails her classes again, it's because she's not trying like she should be. Then I went off on them about how they were just looking for someone to blame to make her feel better. She made the problem, not me, and I wasn't going to be the one they make the scapegoat anymore. My sister is an adult, and she needs to act like it. They sounded defeated, and then apologized before ending the call. Looks like they were. genuinely hoping I'd just sit back and take the blame so that my sister would get better, but I will never do that again. Now my parents are trying to pretend this all never happened, and my sister as well as her clique are avoiding me at all costs, which I suppose is fine with me because I don't want any more drama. But the next time something like this happens, I won't take it from them. Your sister is flat out unhinged, retaliating by stealing and dumping your bike because you ate at the hospital that had nothing to do with her. She doesn't own the hospital, the cost of the food wasn't coming out of her pocket, and stealing a bike is not a prank. This goes beyond a joke when it's your primary transportation. It would have cost you way more to replace it. The cherry on top would have been forwarding the message from unknown numbers to your parents to deal with. If she considers herself an adult, this was her introduction to mess around and find out. Welcome to the world of consequences. Not your problem that she got ridiculed at college and couldn't handle it. Have you ever had something stolen from you? If so, what was it? Please let us know. This one dude stole my holographic Ninetales back in middle school. He's actually no longer with us, if you know what I mean. Karma ain't no joke sometimes. Would I be the jerk if I forced my son to end his relationship if his grades don't go up? I'm 47, female. My son John, who's 16, has always been a great student. Several of his teachers have told me he's one of their best students. I never had to worry about him not doing homework or studying, and he's currently taking all AP classes. As a junior, he began dating a girl last semester, and his grades have plummeted this semester. I know for a fact it's because he's spending most of his time either with his girlfriend or talking to her on the phone. I've caught her talking to him 11 on a school night. I've never been a very strict parent. I never needed to be. But I'm considering forbidding him from dating her until his grades go up. It's going to be finals week in his school in a couple of weeks. He should be able to turn his grades around if he does well on them, and to me it seems like the only way for that to happen is if I order him to come home straight after school and take away his phone. I've tried talking to him about how his grades have gone down, and he brushed me off by saying that the teachers are being unfair or that everyone did poorly on a test. I believed him at first, but now it's been multiple exams and projects that he's flunked. So, would I be the jerk? You're the jerk. This is not going to go the way you think it is. You think that by forcing him to end his relationship, they will lie and say they broke up and didn't, that his grades are magically going to get better. No, instead they will get worse. This is not the way to handle this. Also, investigate his claims that the teacher is acting a certain way towards students, or that everyone failed the exam, because if the majority failed an exam, then there are bigger issues at hand. You would be the jerk. 51-year-old father of 2 here. Your son is so in love that he's throwing away his school career, and you think trying to destroy the relationship will work? He's failing at time management. Be a parent and teach him how to improve that skill. Give him structure by setting a time to do his work every day. His reward can be seeing and talking to his girlfriend after he's finished. Also, talk to his teachers about why his grades are going down. Update: the general consensus was that I should not make my son break up with his girlfriend. Regardless, both my husband and I were in agreement that something needed to be done. This Thursday night, after my son returned home, my husband and I sat him down. We told him that we were disappointed with his behavior and performance in school. He was grounded from now until the end of the school year. We would be taking his phone away every weekday. He would come straight home from school, where he would study for his final exams until bedtime. On the weekends, he would not be allowed to leave the house, but would study and do schoolwork. He would not be allowed to contact his girlfriend during this time. We told him that if we caught him attempting to sneak out, we would sell his Xbox and Nintendo Switch, then his TV if he tried to sneak out more than once. This same punishment applies if the school informs us that he was absent from class. If by the end of the year, he has raised his grades to at least all C's and B's. He would be allowed to spend every waking minute with his girlfriend for all we cared over the summer. But if they haven't, his grounding continues indefinitely, and we're prepared to send him to spend the summer with his grandparents in New Mexico to make sure he and his girlfriend don't have contact. We told him that he needs to apologize to his teachers and ask if there's any way that he can raise his grade in their class. We could tell he was shaken. We always have been very relaxed parents. This is the first time he's ever had to be grounded. But our punishment seems to have worked. Already 3 teachers have emailed us. His math teacher is kind enough to allow him to redo homework that he didn't do. His English teacher is letting him redo an essay that we know is 2 weeks late, and his biology teacher is letting him redo a project he did poorly on. After all of this brilliant advice, you are still lax parents. Look again at what people suggested. Help him with time management, structure. Help him with studying with the essays he failed. Talk to the teachers yourself. You took the laziest route possible with this bizarre 24/7 studying rule, a terrible study technique in my opinion, putting all the work and pressure on the kid and then pat yourself on the back. And you're still fixated on breaking up his relationship. As an experienced tutor, I'm so fed up with parents putting no effort or research into their kids' education, then being shocked when they don't get high grades. It's definitely getting worse, too. You're the jerk. I said it in your last post. Life has to be balanced. You cannot expect your son to live school and studying 4/7. You should have made him study 2 to 3 hours a night and 5 to 6 hours a day on weekends until school was over. Your punishment is ridiculous and you will breed massive resentment. It may give you the result you're looking for to start with. But all you've taught your son is to not trust you because you will completely take his social life away. Sounds like he was such a good kid, the parents never had to really parent, if this is how they're acting on his first time being a teenager with teenager problems and saying they've been relaxed before this. Something tells me that kid was just naturally disciplined and self-motivated. Am I the jerk for telling my sister-in-law that she's an idiot for expecting her family to be generous with gifts for her marriage? When I married my husband, we had a small wedding with 150 guests. Trust me, that's small for our families. We paid for everything ourselves. Altogether, we spent about $25,000. It was in our budget, and we had saved up for it. And that included everything: my dress, the wedding party's dresses and tux rentals, catering, you name it. We paid, and it came under our budget. Our guests were family and close friends, the way it should be, and they were generous with gifts, both from our registry and cash in envelopes. When everything was said and done, our house was filled with great stuff that we needed, and our savings were several thousand over where we started before we paid for the wedding. My husband's sister just eloped in February, and nobody found out about it until early April when she sent the links to her wedding registry. Not too many people have bought anything off of it yet, and she's getting upset about that. All she talks about whenever we speak is how cheap everyone is. Every conversation leads back to the same topic. After more than a month of this, I've had enough. I asked her if she understood why we got gifts when I married her brother, like at our physical wedding that took place at a church and then a reception at a rented ballroom. She said I was treating her like an idiot and that she understood the difference between our weddings. I asked her why she would expect the exact same treatment for two very different events. I said that only an idiot would think the outcome would be the same in both situations. She's mad at me. My husband said he was also frustrated with her stupidity, but that I should apologize for calling her an idiot. Not the jerk. Most people are not going to buy a gift for a wedding they were not invited to. So a person gets married, I'm not invited to. Anything, and I'm still expected to buy them a gift? If I'm incredibly close to that person, maybe I would buy something small, but if not, I would only offer some congratulations. And she can thank her lucky stars that nobody has answered sarcastically to receiving her registry. While you are 100% correct on everything you said, it's usually not considered a nice thing to call someone an idiot. You may have been able to phrase it a little gentler or maybe have brought it up sooner so it did not get you to your breaking point. You should probably clear the air with the idiot remark and then head home to use one of your awesome wedding gifts. Very slight jerk, though I am smiling at what you said because it was a great response to her comment that you were treating her like an idiot. You're the jerk, only slightly, but only because I don't understand why you felt the need to interject into her pity party to call her an idiot. To be clear, she is an idiot, but you could have kept that to yourself. If being around her complaining was too much for you, then you should have tried spending less time around her. So people should annoy you repeatedly and you not say anything? If it's a stranger, you can just walk away. But with family and friends, sometimes you have to tell them the truth. Stop with the sensitivity. People need to know so people learn. If you're always the bigger person, you are always the person who gets dumped on. How do you know when you're not doing something right? Someone tells you and hopefully you go, "Oh, I'm sorry, I'll do better next time." Isn't it better for crap people to learn than to have to constantly repeat their bad behavior? Am I the jerk for telling my husband's grandparents that they shouldn't have surprised their grandkids on Mother's Day? Sunday, my husband, who's 25, and his two siblings, who are 2007 and 22, were planning to spend the day with their maternal side of the family. But their paternal grandparents asked if they could do something too, so we arranged a lunch for them to get together. It was an earlier lunch, so they could make it in time for the other things they had planned with their maternal side. The thing they were not expecting was their dad and his wife, who they are no contact with, to be there. Their grandparents surprised them with this after we all got there, and it was very awkward. It was also my third time meeting their dad. Their dad's wife kept watching them and trying to get their attention. They ignored her. Then she outright asked where her Happy Mother's Day wishes were, which they ignored. She asked about gifts and tried to claim the gifts all three brought for their grandmother. Brother-in-law told her nothing was for her, and why would she ever think that she'd get anything? Their grandfather tried to calm things down by talking over everyone, but it didn't work because their dad's wife just got louder. She started listing off all the gifts she had received from them when they were kids and living with her and their dad. My father-in-law's sister-in-law told her they weren't ever actually from them and that their dad had bought all those gifts and added their names to it, but it was never from them. Their dad's wife then turned on sister-in-law and blamed her, saying she manipulated her brothers to feel the same way she did, and that it was wrong because they were all young enough when their birth mother passed for them to embrace and benefit from a new mother. My husband laughed at that and said sister-in-law was the youngest and only 5 when their mother passed, and their dad went out to replace her as soon as possible because he was pathetic and didn't want to raise his own kids. Brother-in-law added that they were never going to accept some random person who came in months after their mom passed and attempted to assert her dominance as their mother. He said he didn't care if their dad was unfair to her as well because she was downright evil to try and replace their mom. It got so heated that I suggested to my husband that we just move on. Later that night, my husband's grandparents called me to apologize and said they had no idea how things went so wrong. This is where I might be the jerk because I told them they shouldn't have surprised their grandkids by inviting father-in-law and his wife like that if they wanted lunch to go well. I told his grandparents that they know my husband and his siblings are no contact and have no love for their dad or his wife, and they know they used to fight all the time. His grandparents told me it shouldn't need to be a surprise, and I should understand their point of view better. They also told me it's rude to rub it in after they apologized to me. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk for stating facts and hopefully helping avoid any future surprises, especially when they claimed that they didn't know how things had gone so wrong. But out of curiosity, have they actually apologized to their grandkids, the people that they actually ambushed? OP, my husband and sister-in-law didn't get an apology for sure. Not entirely positive about brother-in-law, but I would assume no. Work my hours, or we'll find someone who will. So there I was, working at a mid-size IT firm as a software developer. My team had always been pretty laid back, focusing on results rather than the exact hours we were glued to our desks. Our projects were delivered on time, our clients were happy, and our team morale was high. That is, until we got a new project manager. Let's call him Dave. Dave was fresh from a highly regimented corporate background and had ideas about proper workplace management, which basically meant micromanaging everything. He scheduled unnecessary daily status meetings, demanded we fill out hourly work logs, and insisted that everyone strictly adhere to 9 to 5 office hours with minimal breaks. One day, during one of his infamous efficiency crackdowns, he sent out an email with a new policy that all coding must be done strictly within office hours to ensure collaboration and supervision. This was ridiculous because creative work like coding often requires flexible hours for maximum productivity, but Dave was adamant. And he ended his email with, "If you think you can find a loophole, think again. Follow the rules, or we'll find someone who will." Challenge accepted, Dave. I decided to comply meticulously. I coded strictly between 9 a.m. and 5 p.m., not a minute earlier, not a second later. If I encountered a bug or was in the middle of a complex piece of code, too bad. 5 p.m. means the end, no matter what. My teammates, fed up with being treated like school kids, followed my lead. The results were predictable. Projects that usually took a couple of weeks started dragging on. Tasks that we could have completed in days with a bit of overtime took much longer because we couldn't capitalize on the bursts of late afternoon productivity we were used to. Our workflow was severely disrupted, and the quality of our work started to deteriorate. Dave noticed, of course. He had to answer to upper management for the sudden drop in productivity and lack of commitment, which he knew was a result of our dissatisfaction with his new policy. When upper management called for an impromptu Zoom meeting with all of us at 4:30 p.m. to address the ongoing project delays, the entire team logged in to explain our situation. In the meeting, Dave spent half an hour shifting blame and going off on individual team members. He didn't even mention the 9 to 5 policy that had led to the whole situation. As the clock ticked towards 5 p.m., the tension in the virtual room was palpable, and our team hatched a plan over text. Right on cue, as the clock struck 5, one of the employees spoke up. "In compliance with Dave's 9 to 5 rule, we must log off now." Without missing a beat, every team member clicked leave meeting, leaving a stunned Dave to face the executives alone. This abrupt mass exit highlighted the impracticality of Dave's rigid policy, making it clear to the executives that change was necessary. The incident, quickly dubbed as the 5000 Zoom Exodus, led to another meeting where Dave was publicly admonished and instructed to abolish his strict rules in favor of more flexibility. And as for me and my team, we made sure to celebrate our little victory with a well-deserved happy hour, after 5 p.m., of course. My husband says our house will never be mine. How do I move past this? My husband and I have been married for almost 1 year and have been together for 7. I work a job in media while he works as a therapist. We've been living in my inherited home that has been in my family for many years. Over the past few years, we have both agreed the house and the location are just not ideal. With the housing market being what it is, we've sucked it up and continued living here. Recently, we were offered to purchase my husband's family home. It's a good house that needs a lot of work, but I'm confident we can do what we need to for under $15,000 in renovations. So we're planning to move there and begin renovating. We were both happy and excited until the other day when we were talking about it. Out of nowhere, he told me, "I want you to know this house will never be yours. If we divorce or anything, you will have no right to live here anymore." I found this hurtful and odd. This was never a discussion in the years we have lived in our current home. I would never plan on taking his family home if we were to separate, but it really hurt to hear this, especially when we're trying to have kids. I told him it would be a marital asset since I'm paying half the mortgage and half the renovations. I would never fight you for the house, but I don't plan on getting divorced. This made him very upset. He said that he would rather not move in if there's a chance a judge would determine I had any rights over the home. Was I wrong? How do I move past this with him? So, from what I understand, it's a family home, but you are paying half on the mortgage and paying to renovate, and he said no to you having ownership at all? Then, no way. He can purchase it on his own, renovate it on his own, and you keep yours as a backup from this point forward. Rent it out, and you keep that income. Do not pay a penny towards a house that will never be yours, not 1 penny. This is a huge red flag. He's been living in your paid-off family home, and you're about to buy his family home together, and he doesn't want you to have any ownership? Here's what I would do. Don't sell your family home. Instead, rent it out, mark it being what it is, for side income. Do not add his name to the deed. Do not use any of the profits towards purchasing his family home. Separate your finances stat. Have a joint account where you each put in X of your paycheck for joint bills such as groceries, utilities, insurance, etc. Tell him you will agree his family home is 100% his on one condition. The entire purchase, including repairs, now needs to come out of his pocket, not yours, not the joint account, and you will not be paying mortgages. If he doesn't agree, don't move in. Side-eye him. He's shown you who he is. Depending on how he moves forward, this might be the end of the road for me. My Karen ex-wife demands I babysit for her while her husband is in the hospital. Things are complicated, but I'll try to sum it up for you. I, 34 male, met my ex-wife 7 years ago. We dated for 1 year and were married for 2 before we divorced. When we met, she already had 2 kids from her previous relationship, Patrick, who's 13, and Luna, who's 10. We have 1 son together, Tony, who's 5 now. My own relationship with her kids was good, but they never treated me like their dad or something like that because their dad was involved in their life. Although my wife had primary custody, we all understood I was a stepdad and we were fine with it. My relationship with my ex-wife was good, and I thought very loving. Although after our divorce, I realized that she used to talk a lot about her ex-husband, comparing the 2 of us and stuff like that. Which is definitely weird, but I didn't notice it at the time. Well, turns out that she really couldn't forget her ex, and she ended up cheating with him. This was very hard to process when I found out, thanks to one of her friends, and our divorce was not easy. When her family found out about her infidelity, they got very angry at her and went no contact with her. All of this happened 4 years ago. Ever since, her and her husband had 2 more babies together, one who's 3 and the other is a few months old. Her husband got diagnosed with cancer around November of last year. Even after everything they did to me, I still feel sorry for them and their kids. It's a sad situation, which makes me think I'm a jerk. My ex and I have shared custody with our son, but ever since her husband got sick, my son has been staying with me more days, as sometimes my ex's husband has to stay at the hospital and my ex has to help him. I'm okay with this, of course. However, my ex asked me if I can start taking all of her kids home with me when I pick my son up in these kinds of emergencies. I told her that I don't want to do that, and instead she should ask a friend to take care of them or try to pay a babysitter. I pay good child support, and I know they're not spending all that money on my son at the moment because he's mostly with me. I think it'll be enough to pay for a couple of hours. She told me her friends don't want to help her anymore, and her family still doesn't talk to her. I told her they need to figure out a solution. I will only help take care of my son. I feel like a jerk, to be honest, like I'm being too petty. I meant child support, not the jerk. Sounds like your ex has burned a bunch of bridges and is trying to make you her lifeline because you share a kid. The whole situation is unfortunate, but it isn't your responsibility to help her. You're right about her being able to use the money paid for child support to pay for care for her other kids. But even without that, it would still not be your responsibility. You sound like a caring person and she knows how to make you feel guilty, but it's not wrong for you to refuse to help. Why should you feel like a jerk when you don't want to take care of 5 kids aged 0 to 13 instead of just 1? That's a big responsibility, not the jerk. Not the jerk. Your ex cheated with her ex gets sick and wants you to take care of her kids with ex. That is completely disrespectful to you. Take care of your kid. In fact, get full custody and tell her to buzz off.